Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, podcast guesting for energy healers and coaches, a sustainable growth strategy. I'm Jessica Rhodes, your co-host. I'm the founder and co-owner of Interview Connections, and I'm joined by Christina Woods. Christina, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christina Woods. I'm from California, and I am a hypnotherapist, an energy healer, and an empowerment coach. And I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks for having me, Jessica.
Yeah, of course. And I just have to tell you guys that we actually didn't communicate our outfits. We just manifested the perfect balance of red, green. I have green nails. Christina has red nails. Like I kid you not. We showed up here and we're perfectly in sync. So I think that is the vibe of being on a call with energy healers and coaches. Everything is very much harmonious. So I love it. So I wanted to kind of bring you guys, like bring you all up to speed on like why we decided to put together this webinar. Now, I messaged Christina about 1 week ago and I said, do you want to put together a webinar? So this is very much like moving at the speed of inspiration and putting something together that really inspired us. And Christina has been working with Interview Connections for 3+ years now, getting booked on podcasts, growing her energy healing and coaching business tremendously, and has such amazing results. And she'll often come on our podcast guesting masterclasses to, share in kind of like a 10-minute testimonial. Here's the results I've had. Here's how I've done it. And I'm like, we really need more than 10 minutes to fully educate people on how you have created the success you've created through podcast guesting. And Interview Connections, we're a done for you podcast booking agency. So coaches and healers and entrepreneurs work with us to actually get booked. We're a done for you service. And I've also observed that a lot of times there's certain, there's things that hold us back, hold us back from wanting to get visible. And then there's the unknown of, okay, if I do this, like, how do I make the most of it? So we have an incredible hour planned for you today where we're going to talk about a little bit about why podcast guesting for energy healers and coaches. Now, we're not going to belabor that a ton because if you're here, you understand the value, you just like want to learn more, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. And then we're going to go through kind of some of the fears, the things that hold us back. And Christina will be discussing like kind of how to break through some of the fears that might be stopping us from getting visible. And then we're going to go through a ton of strategies on actually how to monetize and grow your business sustainably through podcast guesting. So how does that sound to everyone? Let me know in the chat. Just put yes in the chat if you're like, yeah, that sounds perfect. Let me know in the chat just to make sure everyone is awake and ready to learn about podcast guesting. Yes. Awesome. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. So Christina, why don't you talk a little bit about we're going to kind of pass the mic back and forth here. Why is podcast guesting such an important strategy for energy healers and transformational coaches?
Well, first of all, we all know, and you just said I won't belabor this, but I think that as a modern thought leader and a modern business model, and having, being an energy healer and a transformational coach, we often can go in this vortex of, but what I do is so unique and it's so mine. How do I even begin to explain what I do? Because we do have to create our own way, just like any business owner does it their way. And so for that reason, it's so important. And it allows you to have words to what you do. It allows you to express what you do because we can't just sit behind. I mean, there is no divine will without divine action. And this is the action to put the words behind what you do. And as a modern thought leader and a modern, business model, it's a conversation. It's not getting on a stage. It's a conversation to express what you love. It's that divine action. So
Yeah. And I know you and I have talked about human design. So who here knows human design or knows kind of what their lines are? And if you don't worry about it. We're not going to go into a whole thing about human design. But is anyone here, you can, if your camera's on, you just give me a quick nod or just put in the chat if you know what human design is. Okay. So there's an element of human design that is being a generator, a responder. And so if that is part of your chart, like being a podcast guest is really good for you because your content flows best when you're responding.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you don't know human design, like, let me know if you're tracking here. If somebody says, like, here's a camera, here's your phone, I want you to make a video for your Instagram. Is there any element of you that's just like, what, what should I talk about? Like,
Yeah.
what should I, yeah. But when you're a generator and you're a responder, you have some questions, you go on a podcast. If somebody just starts asking you questions about your modality, asking you questions like, how do I break, like, how do I work through this pain? Like, how do I do this? You could coach them all day long and you could
Right.
ask them all day long. Yeah.
And most people are generators. That's the most common human design. So most of us could sit in a room and say, how would I explain what I do? It's so me, and I don't know, I mix all these modalities together, and I've learned, from my life for so long. But somebody asks you what you do, it's so easy to respond. So most of all the human design, whatever they're called, most of us are generators. And so it's so easy if someone asks you. So it's just so natural for you to say, oh, well, let me share with you, and then give examples, and then give stories. It's just what you do all day. So
Yeah.
it's so easy.
And when people, I think kind of maybe one of our last points about why podcast guesting for energy healers and coaches, your clients choose you because going again, speaking of human design, like they get a sacral hit. Like I have a sacral authority. So when I'm
Yes.
a yes or something or a no on something, I just know. Like there, somebody asked me the other day, like, hey, do you want to join my WhatsApp group for podcasters? And I was like, no. Like it is a sacral no. Like I will get overwhelmed. Like I
Right.
just don't want to be in that group. And she gets human design. So she's like, sacral never lies. So when people
Yeah.
hear you speak, your ideal clients hear you speak, they just know. Like when I wanted to do hypnotherapy, when I wanted Reiki, I just knew Christina was the one for me. So I'm also a client of Christina's. My daughter is a client of Christina's. There's just a sacral knowing. I'm not going to go researching all around. I just know because also I can hear her, like I can feel her energy. I can hear her speak. And that is, I'm just like, yes, yes. And so when
Yeah.
you're a guest on podcasts, people just hear you and they're like, yeah, like this is the person for me.
That's absolutely true. And we know everything is energy. And so I've had clients listen to a 20-second clip and say, they heard my podcast. Oh, really? What resonated with you? And they share with me it was the clip. Well, did you listen to the episode? No, I didn't. I don't even know where the episode is. They listened to the clip. It resonated, that frequency resonated with them. And the trust was there from a 20-second clip. So it's the energy of that frequency of I'm meant for them, they're meant for me, we connect. And you're able to do that just by speaking who you are authentically. And the people that don't resonate with you, that's okay. But, we talk about in the energy world, the right people will come to me, the right clients will come to you. That doesn't mean we don't have to take divine action and speak what we do. We don't just sit in a room and say, and I have energy healer friends that say, I don't need to be on social. I don't need to do these things. I don't like it. It's a low frequency. Okay. But you'll get a lot more clients and you'll heal the world and transform more people if we get out there and share what we do. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there has to be a balance of doing and being,
yes,
feeling
yes,
in the feminine energies. Like take the action and then be in receivership for what you want and what you're manifesting. So
exactly.
let's talk a little bit about what holds coaches and healers back from podcast guesting. And if you'd like to share in the chat, if there's anything if you haven't yet been getting on podcasts, what has held you back? Have there been any fears? Feel free to share in the chat. And if you're like, I don't want to share my fears right now, that's okay. You could just listen. But I mean, first of all, what were any fears or hesitations you had in the beginning? And what do you see in your clients that you work with to help them remove the blocks from growing?
Yeah, sure. So I think my fears in the beginning are really common with a lot of people. I think that I felt that my I wasn't unique enough. There wasn't anything special. I had left a 30-year corporate career, and many energy healers and transformational coaches, have previous careers and lives, and this might be something they've evolved and fallen into, or it's turned into something that now they want to do full time or on the side. And so it might be our side thing that we love to do and want to grow. And so we don't think it's something to take more serious. It's just sort of who we are. And so I had that imposter syndrome of, well, it's just sort of something that I like. Do people really want to hear about it? So that was a big fear of what's the big deal. So I'm intuitive. So I like to heal people. Does anyone want to care and hear about that story? But a big issue that I work with clients on and myself was when your gifts aren't nurtured, when your gifts are just, you're too much. Those things in the world, external validation is always something that's, you know, achievements, those things. How much money do you make? Where are you climbing the ladder? Those things are always praised. And these other gifts, being a healer, transforming people, these things maybe aren't praised as much. We just don't feel like they're going to be treasured or nurtured or appreciated. And so we think, who's going to care? Who wants to hear? So those things need to be acknowledged, that your gifts are needed. Your gifts need to be heard. They want to be heard. Look outside. People need to hear what you do. So obviously the visibility, we need to get past those things, just speaking your truth. I had to really get past that. I honestly, Jessica, would take hours in the beginning to prep for a podcast. I would look at my notes. I would sweat. I mean, I would think, I tried to predict what everyone would ask me, which is ridiculous because it's a conversation and you cannot predict what someone's going to ask you. But that was that fear of not believing that it could just flow. And now I'll listen to the podcast so I get a flavor for what they're about. And I trust and lean in that I'll know how to respond, and I trust my intuition and that things will come up. But yeah, in the beginning, it was really a big fear of, I'm not good enough. They won't take me serious. I'm not credible. I've only been a hypnotherapist now for maybe 4 or 5 years. So in the beginning, I thought, I don't have any stories, do I? Do they even, what are they going to ask me? And
Yeah.
you know what? I did have stories. I wasn't born yesterday. We all have stories. We all have things that we can share.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see from my perspective, having consultations with entrepreneurs that want to be on podcasts, I find that the fears kind of go one way or the other. It's either this won't work for me, I'm afraid this won't work, or this is going to work so well, I'm going to have way too much business and I'll crumble under the pressure. And so, or
Yes,
break.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, and that's true. Absolutely is we don't always admit that, but there is sometimes that little voice inside like, wait a second, is this going to be a lot of work? And is this going to be hard? And is my email inbox going to get full with things that, I'm not sure if I have the infrastructure to handle the influx of new subscribers or new people. And that's not how it works. You're able to handle scheduling you guys send everything in a tidy little email. You just book it. You're able to communicate, and the subscribers sort of come in nicely. You get people that want to book discovery calls with you from podcasts. It's a nice trickle. I have had podcasts where I did get an influx, and we'll talk about that. But you're ready when that comes. It's not like a wave, a tidal wave of, oh my goodness. It's beautiful little surprises of people that say, hey, I listened to your podcast. I want to work with you and I want to buy your package. I mean,
Yeah.
these are great things.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll be sharing like at the end of the webinar how people can connect with us. But just in this moment, Christina, if folks are listening here and they're like, okay, Christina sounds like she's conquered the fears of visibility and is growing tremendously. You do several different modalities from Reiki to, hypnotherapy and coaching. How can folks find you, like connect with you if they want your help breaking through some of the subconscious fears they might have around this?
Yeah, sure. So my website, ChristinaLWoods.com, Christina with a CH. And I have everything on there. I'm also a Theta healer, advanced medical intuitive, like all of you, to mix all kinds of things up.
I love it. Yeah. So definitely get in touch with Christina if you're like, I really want to do this, but I'm like very aware that there's a block. I cannot recommend her enough. So now we're going to go through the journey of podcast guesting. And how it grows your business and give you a lot of actionable tips because I'm an actionable girl. I'm a doer. I've got all the tips. So we are going to do that. We're going to be sharing stories from Christina's experience. So let me know if you're ready to get some actionable advice so you can grow your business sustainably because you're a coach and an energy healer. Maybe we've got folks here who aren't a coach or an energy healer, but you're like, I want to learn about podcast guesting. You're an entrepreneur because you want to create sustainable growth. You don't just want to work yourself to the bone and like be all burnt out. So let's go. Let's talk about sustainable growth through podcast guesting. So, number one, we're going to kind of go through some tips here, and Christina will expand on how she's done this in her business going on podcasts. So, for context, like when we're working with a client at Interview Connections, we're laying the groundwork, making the one sheet, getting really clear on the types of shows. And then the rubber meets the road when we start pitching and booking. And so that first moment is when we book you on a podcast and you get a tidy little email connecting you with the host who wants to interview you on their show, is ready to schedule. And so one of the first tips we tell our clients is go post on social media when you get booked. Not like when the interview is live, but like when you land the booking. So Christina, share a little bit more about how you implemented that and then what happened, like the full story.
Yeah. So I was as green as it gets. So I just sort of just followed this is what you do. And, never been on any podcast, by the way, not even remotely. I barely even listened to them when I started working with you. It was a gut, like, heck yes, I've got to do this. And I posted my very first, hey, I'm going to be on this podcast. And a girlfriend saw it and shared with someone because there's instant credibility that's built, and shared it with someone that needed a speaker at a yoga retreat in Northern California. And from that, a conversation started and they asked me to be a speaker. I went up and stayed in a lovely cabin and met and spoke with these women in this at this beautiful retreat for a few days. And from there, I met other women who ended up being clients. Their children ended up being clients. And you're absolutely right. That was from posting about a show I was going to record. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that showed me, okay, wow, they're giving me really good advice and the credibility is there. And for a moment, I thought, well, this is interesting. I haven't even been on the show yet. And the credibility that this is giving me, it makes you think like, wow, this is really the perception and the credibility has really been elevated.
Yeah. So podcast guesting does just that. It elevates your credibility. It shows that not only you say you're good at what you do, but other people
Yes.
believe that you're good at what you do to the point where they'll bring you onto their podcast and share you with the audience that they worked so hard to build. And then talk about that. I've written some pieces of content on how we're all sitting on a pot of gold. All of us have future clients in our existing audience. Like we're always marketing and getting visibility to new audiences because we want to grow, but it's always important to remember there are clients already on your email list that haven't signed up yet. There's people following you on social media that haven't signed up yet. And when you are getting interviewed on podcasts, you're activating leads that you already got from another source. So
Mm-hmm.
can you talk a little bit about how podcast guesting has helped you activate business that you already had in your audience?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even this week, I have had a client for 6 months and her package just ended. And in my emails, I'm always repurposing podcasts. They're great context type of emails. It's a piece of cake. I mean, there's constantly emails of podcasts coming out. So I'll look at the subject, write a nice email. Hey, listen to this. And she had never really listened to my podcast. She's been a client, but like I said, her package was ending. She listened to the podcast. She was like, you sounded great. This was so inspiring. I absolutely want to renew with you. She liked the work, but she felt it was complete, but she was inspired. And she had said she didn't want to renew, but now she wants to renew. And it was like it kind of activated her again to hear me in a different way, to hear things that apparently we hadn't really talked about. And, I'd worked with her for a while. So that again showed me that, you think your email list knows you. You think your email list is listening to all of your podcasts. They're not. I'm sending them, but that doesn't mean they click on every single podcast that I send them. So that was really, really
Yeah.
good lesson.
I love that. I love that. I just commented on somebody's post inside a group that I'm in, and the person asked, like, why don't my clients engage with me on social media? And then I just commented and I was like, because oftentimes high ticket buyers don't engage on social media. They lurk and they read, but they are very careful about where they're like, because once you comment, everyone can see what you said. And so, and everyone in there like was like, oh yeah, my clients, they don't comment on my social media, they don't engage with it,
No,
but
you're
they
right.
buy, and then they're in. And so yeah, you can use your podcast appearances to help engage. And so I like that you said that you use it for your email marketing, like you repurpose the content, a conversation you had on a podcast. And just a quick tip for everyone, you could take the transcript of a podcast interview or even the description and then ask ChatGPT to like formulate an email, and then you can customize it, tailor it, and send it out. So there's really cool kind of tips and tricks we give our clients to help you repurpose the interview. So you send it out to your list, and then you can recommend it specifically to a client. Like it sounds like you did with like, hey, to check out this podcast interview.
Mhm.
We always send a podcast interview to our prospective clients who book a consultation call. We'll say, hey, before the call, if you can listen to this podcast, that'll help you get to know us a little bit more. So really use these interviews in your sales and marketing, and it'll help warm up your audience and just bring your existing audience members, your leads, allow them to get to know you from a new angle, as you said. Even people that have worked with you for 6 months, there's things that you guys didn't talk about.
Right, right. And just, as a busy entrepreneur, solopreneur, content can sometimes weigh heavily on our shoulders. I know for me in the beginning, I didn't have a VA. I didn't have any of those things. It was, me and the dog, and we're just trying to make it work. So to have content coming in and to use those apps, just create clips, like you said, chat, put it out there. It can create posts, things so easily. It really, really saved me. And it made such a big difference for visibility, getting out there, and rich content.
Yeah. So now I want to talk a little bit about the host of the show, and we'll discuss this from a few different angles. So number one, because you had mentioned preparing, like you used to spend a lot of time preparing, and now you're a seasoned pro, so you probably don't need to spend hours preparing for each individual
Yeah.
podcast. But the reason I want to start with like how do you prepare for your interviews is because the host of the show is a potential client. There's somebody that could and likely will hire you. So share a little bit about, let's first start with the preparing, just to give folks some tips on how to prepare and come to these interviews, with our A game so that the hosts do want to work with us. Share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I do listen to an episode, and I'll often scan their episodes to try and find one maybe in a similar arena as what I do, so that I know how they handle and work with, the space that I'm in. So what is their opinion about energy healers, hypnotherapists, instead of me looking up and reading the one they did with a scientist? What are their opinions? What are they open to, not open to? And if you're energy healers and transformational coaches, which you are, we're very good at picking up the nuances of the conversations and the vibes. So it doesn't take long before what to expect. And that just helps to go in and understand their personality and the energy and how to easily connect with them and prepare. And they appreciate it so much. So I'll do that while I'm getting ready or going on a walk. I used to take a bunch of notes, and sometimes I'll jot a couple things down. I'll often look at their website, maybe just to make sure I know what their business model is or what do they do. Just kind of speak to that. How can I support them? For sure. So that, in the green room or after the conversation, how can they support me? But how can I support them is a huge part of the conversation, and why my calls go so well with them. If I don't know what they do, it's a little hard to ask how I can support them, or how can we collaborate if I don't, know what they do.
Yeah. And so let's share some. So, one strategy that we talk about in terms of how to monetize your podcast interviews as a guest is the host relationship. Like when you're interviewed on a podcast, the host that interviews you, they're a fellow business owner, entrepreneur, leader. Um, they're somebody that's investing in their personal brand, whether they're, they have a full-time job and they're building a podcast, they're building their own brand, or they're an entrepreneur and it's a part of their marketing strategy, but they are somebody that is investing in themselves in some way. And so they're really good people to be networking with. And a lot of times people overlook that and they're just like, I just need bigger shows. But it's actually the host of the show that's a really good person to really hone in on and really put your attention to. So talk about like of the shows you've been on, kind of the caliber, for lack of a better word. Like you've had doctors that have interviewed you and really successful entrepreneurs. Talk about your journey with hosts.
Oh, sure. So, yes, I have had podcasts with doctors and people in the beginning. I thought, why? I was just so honestly so intimidated by some of them, and then they were the best conversations, and all different walks of life. So people that owned 4 or 5 businesses, doctors, and sometimes I have said, all right, what is the connection here? How is this going to work? And it always, always works. There's always a connection. It's always helped grow my audience. There's always been a way to connect. And it's really opened my eyes to where I put my own audience in a box. I thought I only helped this type of, these type of women or these type of, my people. And I've been able to see how, no, that's not true. These type of people want to know about me. I can help. My offers they're interested in this. So it really helps you get clear on your offers, your messaging, really, really in a great big way. But back to your question about hosts. So, just yeah, help me out. I got off
Yeah, yeah,
track.
yeah. Let me hone in because you're like, I've been on 100 shows. How do I know? Over 100 shows. Which shows? So do you remember the first host that became your client?
Oh, yes.
Okay, tell us that story.
Yes, I was petrified of her because she was a very high-end executive coach, and I thought, she knows more than me, and what can I possibly say to enhance her audience? They were all over LinkedIn, high-end coaches, and we connected. There was trust, and it was the first time. Right after the show, the next day, she called me and said, "I need your services." And I need it for visibility to elevate my business. And it was such a great lesson because it doesn't matter where people are in their business. We all hit an upper limit and we need to grow. And it just reminded me that, whether I have a smaller business and she had a bigger business, she makes more money than me, but it doesn't matter. I can help her. She can help me. And what I have to say is important. What she has to say is important. And I've hired her. She's hired me. So that was the first time that a host hired me, and we worked together for a long time. And she has recommended now, she's a coach, and she actually recommends her clients to me to do hypnotherapy because she feels as a coach, there's a missing element that they need their beliefs, their limiting beliefs. She can't do that work. So she says, can you just do a session or 2 with them, help them heal that part, and then I'll continue the coaching with them. And she used to work with a different hypnotherapist. And she's like, I like your services better. If they like him, they can go to him. But now we've collaborated in that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
I literally have chills like hearing that because what I get from this story is abundance, is collaboration.
Mhm.
She's an executive coach, you're an empowerment coach. Very easily as coaches, there's a fine line between we're competitors and we're collaborators. But when
Yeah.
you really get, like Brene Brown says, it's hard to hate people close up. I think that's the quote or something like that. And it's like when you really get to know somebody, you see how actually like how much you have in common with somebody, but really how different you are too. And
Yeah.
I think that's like the most relevant aspect for this conversation is there's a lot of coaches out there, but they all have a maybe different modality or maybe the same modality, but they have different backstories. And people will, again, it's just going to be a yes to working with the coach that they love. And also, an executive coach is going to be helping with them with their business and their leadership and their operations. but not necessarily their limiting beliefs. Like maybe a little bit, but not to the point where you're getting like, you know,
Yeah.
subconscious. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I had another host one time right on the spot in the middle of the episode. She's like, I love what you do so much. I am feeling it that anyone listening, the first person to respond, I am going to give a free session with Christina. And that, I think it was actually like a little package that I had. And that client ended up being so wonderful that she bought more packages with me, but she literally gave, a 4-digit package, paid for a 4-digit package with me the first time I met her, right on a show. And I afterward, I'm
That's
like, "Are you sure?
amazing.
Do you know how much this is?" And she's like,
Do you know what you're
"I,
committing
yeah, do you know what you
to?
just did?" And she gave it
That's
away. And so she's like, "I feel aligned." And she was definitely an energy healer. She's like, "I feel called. I feel aligned. This is what I meant to do. This is what I want to give someone." And yeah, that client and I are really, really dear friends now. And yeah, that was really, so many magical things happen with hosts.
That's amazing. So, I bring in, like, I have a lot of masculine energy. I'm like a doer, I'm an action taker. But what I like to bring into these conversations is that it's not just the doing. I don't want to be like, Christina, what did you do in that conversation? Because I think it was more about who you were being and your energy
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
conversation. Just as much as you could say, what do you feel like led to these hosts, like just pulling out their credit cards, swiping blindly?
You know, it's authenticity. It's
Yeah.
building trust. It's authenticity. It's being yourself, but it's sharing the stories. It's what do you sharing the journey of what you do with your clients, giving examples. I honestly, I was really bad at that and still sometimes struggle because my personal journey is how I got here. So a lot of my stories in the beginning were and I've had to learn, how do I turn this into stories about my clients, stories that, my audience can resonate with. So that this helped me practice doing that, being a good storyteller. Maybe some of you are just naturally good at that. That was definitely not my thing. So learning how to resonate with people. And in the beginning, I would send handwritten notes and little journals to everyone. And I got more phone calls and thank yous, and then built friendships and connections with them. I started doing it through Amazon with little personal notes because it was just easier after a while. But there are times I go back and I do that. And I think it's just that extra touch, connection, networking in a different way that stood out as I was building my business. And, and a lot of them are still, I'm collaborating with segments and markets, transgender market, sexual desirability for differently abled people. I mean, markets I just never would have imagined, and frankly, in my wildest dreams, just through podcasting.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I would love to talk about that a little bit more because like when we work with a client, the first step is who's your target audience? Who
Mhm.
is your ideal client? And you all have an answer to that. This is the type of client I work with. Up until now, this is the type of client I work with. Because then you go on podcasts and you have people reach out to you and you get exposed to audiences and you're like, oh, like, yeah, of course I can do hypnotherapy with a man. Of course I can do
Yeah.
hypnotherapy with a transgender woman. And, there's so many different markets. And so the one story I like would love for you to share if you can about there was a podcast we booked you on with a male audience and you were like,
Yes.
um, I'm an empowerment coach for women. So tell us that story.
Sure. So, and I mean, honest, you must all think I just freak out about every podcast, but honestly, I'm just being honest here. So I read his thing. He's this motivational speaker, very, on stages everywhere. I thought, oh man, this is gonna be, I'm scared. So I'm speaking on his podcast, and it was, this high performance nutrition type of thing. And I thought, okay, he's got a definite male dominated audience. I don't know how interested he'll be in this high performance woman energy healer. I don't know how much Reiki I can talk about. And it went very well. And my inbox, I thought something was broken
I
because,
remember that Facebook DM from you.
yeah, I literally thought something was broken because my inbox was just flooded with new subscribers. It went up 75% my email list. And so I surveyed them, as they were mostly men, and I focus on working with, high achieving, accomplished women. And I thought that, they would want me to do hypnotherapy on, I don't know, working out or athletics or something. No, it was relationships and self-esteem and all the things I already do. And I didn't really need to put them in a different category or anything. And so of course I've always have worked with some men too, but it was a really nice surprise. It opened my eyes. And that host also actually recommended his wife and their one of their daughters. So it was just one of those big surprises. I think every time I get scaredy pants, it turns out pretty good. It's
That's so funny.
a
That's so
lesson.
funny.
It's a divine lesson for sure.
Absolutely. Sometimes the universe just wants us to, open ourselves up to
And
new
chill out.
markets and to new people. And it really, I've seen this so often with so many different clients and, I always like when people ask me, like, what if you guys book me on a show that I don't think is a good fit? I always say, like, first
Mm,
we need to have a conversation. Like, what do you see? We'll share what we see and we'll like come to an agreement. Do we bonus it? Do we replace it? Do we say, like, no, this is a good fit? And a lot of times we're going to be like, trust us. Like, our
yeah,
booking agents, like, most of our full-time employees, our booking agents have been here like 4+ years. Many of them started because like COVID's the marker. Yeah, they were here before COVID. So like
sure.
long-term staff, they really get this and they see the vision. Sometimes they see a vision in the blind spot of one of our clients. Like it might be a blind spot for you, like, where would I connect with this audience? And we're like, trust us. And then you do it and you're like, oh. So I love that.
Yeah, I've never questioned one that you've sent me to, and I've never finished a podcast ever and thought, what in the world? Why was I on that? I've never.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it's always felt aligned. It's always felt good. Sure, there's hosts that you click with more than others. We're all
Uh-huh.
people, but I've never felt like, that didn't make sense. Never.
Oh, well, that's why you're a dream to work with. So now let's talk about the call to action. So we really talked a lot about the host relationship and what's possible when you really connect with hosts. And now let's talk about the audience. You know, how are you connecting with the audience that's not there in the room with you? The interview, the stories that you share, the offer that you make. So at the end of a podcast, the host will say, like, where can our listeners find you online? Like, what are you saying as your call to action? Tell us about that.
Sure. So, as in energy healing and as a transformational coach, I'll sometimes find that the hosts do ask me what is hypnotherapy? How does it work? Which can get kind of clunky and boring. So I try to keep that less about the process and more about what that transformation looks like. So because I don't think the audience really wants to know, the science behind it, yet some of the hosts can. So I think about the audience in my answers is what I'm trying to say. So I think that's important because we love the process and we get that, but the audience doesn't care. They care about how it makes them feel or how it's going to transform them. And that's important to keep in the forefront of our mind when we're speaking. And so stories, examples, and the outcomes that they'll have, the outcomes, the results, examples. And one thing I didn't realize is, yes, our own stories, they're very important. I've had people from high school 30, 40 years ago become clients because of trust and saying, I knew you when and now I want to work with you. We weren't even friends in high school, but because they heard those stories. And so yes, the audience hearing transformational outcomes, like I want to be like that, or I want what you did for her, really, really makes a difference. And call to action, in the beginning, I had just started my business. I didn't even have a lead magnet. I mean, I asked you guys, okay, you're booking me. What do I do? And we agreed we'll just have my free clarity call in the beginning. And that was sufficient. People just booked a free, and I gave a little bit of a longer one in the beginning, and that was fine. And then I got, my call to action, keeping it very simple, like you've directed, to one social media, to my website, or now I have downloadables and little freebies. And the hosts are so grateful. So anything you have, they're just so grateful that, wow, you're going to give my audience this free thing or a handout or even a free 30-minute clarity call. I can't tell you how grateful they are. They really are
Yeah.
grateful.
Yeah, and Jen asked, "Do you tailor your specific modalities to each podcast?"
So I do emphasize some more than others. So, as you know how to read the room. This is what we do. So obviously some are more geared towards maybe profit and a business and some transformation, and some are really woo and want to talk about energy healing more than others. So yes, some want to talk about past lives and want to go there, and some are Christian based and don't want to go there. So, you read the room and navigate it just like you would in life. So yeah, I hope that answers.
Yeah, and the free calls are also really good for that. Like I do that, not as a coach or an energy healer, but just as somebody talking about a marketing strategy. I'll in the pre-call or even the green room, just
Yes.
share with the host, like, hey, based on like I'll ask them, hey, I understand your audience to be, fill in the blank. Can you give me any more specifics about who your audience is? Because they know
Yes.
their audience better than what they wrote on their description of their podcast whenever they started their podcast. And so then you can, and they'll fill in, and then I'll say, great, like I have this topic. We could kind of take it from a different angle that's more relevant to your audience. Like, how does that sound? And they're like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Thank you. Thank you. So,
Yes. I would say lately too, as you know, there's more pre-calls
yep.
before podcasts. And yes, that is the conversation where, they will guide you. Tell me more about your business and modalities. And they'll say, oh, I've had a lot of those types of podcast episodes. I really like, I had one recently. I don't want to talk about imposter syndrome. I don't want to do that. Can we just talk? Let's talk about this. I haven't had this. Let's talk about something fresh. Or can we,
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to talk about boundaries, we need to have it in a different context so it's more unique. So, you have to take some notes there, but they'll guide you. And then, you do a little bit of prep and frame that in your mind before you get on.
Yeah, and you can also ask the host what is your most popular episode and what about that episode do you think your listeners really liked? And especially if it's a pre-call, go listen to that episode and that'll give you some hints of like what made it so popular. So there's definitely really strict there's good questions that you can ask the host to set yourself up for success. And then also asking these questions shows the host that you are there as an active co-creator of the episode. A lot of guests show up and they're just like, great, like I'm here to be interviewed. I've got great value. I'm a great guest. But like when you show up and you're asking questions, you're like, let's create a good show together. The energy is just so much more harmonious in that
Yeah.
environment.
And I'll say that anytime I've ever felt like I was getting boring or I was bored, like I'm saying the same thing or something needs to be spiced up or something, I just schedule a call with your team and say, can you
Mhm.
listen to these shows? Can you tell me what's going on? I need to be spiced up here. I need to be activated. Um,
Yes.
Tell me, give me some tips or help me out here. And it's just it's a quick call. It's not this long training session.
Yeah.
It's a quick call. They know me, they know what I need, they listen, they come prepared.
Hmm.
It's individual to me. So
Yeah, I've had the team because I have the booking team pitch and book me on podcasts because I like experiencing our program as well as a client, and then I've seen them do this for other clients. They'll listen to an interview and then come up with topics and questions based off of the interview because the host will ask you questions on your one sheet, but then the conversation will maybe they ask one question from the one sheet and then it goes off into multiple different areas. And then just like Christina said, if it feels like it's getting stagnant or you're like, I want to switch it up a little bit, like Dan just did that for me. I'm like, I want to switch up the one sheet. I look at my one sheet, I'm like, I don't think they're asking a lot of these questions. He's like, well, let me listen to one of your interviews that you did recently that you thought went well. and I'll write some new topics and questions. And I'm like, thank you. Yeah, awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah. Let me see here. And if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat. Um, but I think we kind of went through all of the main points. There was a lot of value here. So we're going to send out the replay, but I saw some of you guys taking notes, which is amazing. Just to give a little bit, I think now we'll share a little bit more about like how we each work with our clients so that if folks want to reach out to us, we give them all that information. So with Interview Connections, we're a done for you podcast booking agency. We've got some of our clients here. And we will book you on podcasts. And we are not, this is a phrase I used in a call this morning, like we're not a hired gun that just goes to pitch you on podcasts. We're really your partner in the process. It's a very white glove concierge level service where we walk you, like we'll make your one sheet, we'll make your media kit, we'll write out your success blueprint so we know what types of shows we're going to book you on. And then we get you, our program guarantees 30 podcast interviews in the first year. Christina's been with us for more than 3, so she's been on hundreds. But we start with that first round and you'll get interview audits. We'll make your, one sheet. We'll do coaching calls with you to help you monetize your interviews. So we wanted to pull back the curtain and show you all the different ways that Christina has implemented this strategy and grown her business tremendously. So if you hear all this and you're like, yes, like I would love to be where Christina is, then book a consultation call. We have the link in the chat here on Zoom and we'll put it below the replay. So you could just book a consultation call with myself or with Douglas, who's on our team here. So book a call. We'd love to work with you. We've got a little holiday sale happening. If you're watching this in December, book a call. And then Christina, share with everyone who knows they have some subconscious thought, fears and limiting beliefs. And they're
Yeah.
like, I need some clearing. Every doctor has a doctor. Every energy healer has a healer, I'm sure.
Oh, we do. And if you don't, you need them. Everybody knows that. I think we do energy healings or clearings for sure weekly. So yeah, I'm an RTT hypnotherapist, so rapid transformational hypnotherapist, if everyone's familiar with that modality. And I do medical intuitive technique, which is also a hypnotherapy technique, but channeling source and using intuition to scan the body for medical blocks and energy blocks, and Reiki master, a Theta healer, advanced Theta healer, and transformational coach. And I do primarily work with accomplished, busy, high achieving women to shed beliefs. So we go in and we find out, what are those root sources and limiting beliefs and things that we need to shed that are, not blocking you entirely because you're accomplished. You're achieving many things in life and have a lot of boxes checked, and have a lot of clients come to me and say, I probably shouldn't even come to you because I have so many great things going on. But and there's a big belief that we can have part of the pie but not all of the pie, and that's just a belief. That is not the truth. It's just a belief. You can have these things with ease and grace. So visibility, and things get to be easy, things get to flow. Shedding beliefs about speaking your truth, and especially as an energy healer and a transformational coach, having intuition. And one of the big beliefs I had was, no one wants to have an energy healer and a hypnotherapist and a corporate person mixed together. And wrong. I got plenty of doctors and lawyers and CEOs that want to do past life regression. Let me tell you, big belief that I had that no, they would never want that. No, that was just a thing I had. And so when you are your authentic self, they come. And so yeah, I shed those beliefs with you, rewire the truth and clear those energy blocks with you. I work with people one-to-one for a few months at a time, sometimes single sessions, and work with you all over the world virtually. So I have clients from Pakistan to Canada to the United States, everywhere.
Yeah, it's really powerful work too over Zoom. I bought a Reiki package and I was blown away. I've done Reiki in person with people locally, but I saw one of Christina's posts and I grabbed myself a little package of Reiki sessions. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was crazy. The energy, like you can just feel the energy through Zoom. I don't know how it works, but it was incredible. And I've also, my daughter did hypnotherapy with Christina because we were experiencing some challenges with her behavior. And I'm like, I don't know, like therapy did not work, like talk therapy, dead end. And then she did hypnotherapy with Christina. Oh my God, 180, absolute 180 in her whole behavior and attitude. So really recommend Christina. And yeah, if you guys want to get booked on podcasts, like let's do this. Come work with us. You'll be our next success story. We'll be doing a webinar this time next year together, just like me and Christina. You got to have matching set though. You know, the outfits do need to align.
And I just can't say enough about working with you. It's my anniversary now. And yeah, and so that's really, really exciting. And someone asked about where I got this mic. I got it from you. So I don't know where you got it, but it's amazing and it makes me feel fancy. So I love it.
We are here to make you feel fancy, to sound great, to get you in front of the right audiences, and just love on you. Like, let us get you the visibility that you know you deserve. And yeah, so come book a call. The links are in the chat or below this video if you're hopping on the replay. I hope everyone has a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, whatever you celebrate. I hope you have just the best holiday season, and we can't wait to talk with you soon. All right.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right.